Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you to another episode of the Better the Pond Pondcast, the Flying V edition, where we talk to incredible people who are creating impact and ripples on the pond. My name is Warren Berry, and I'm your host and the founder of Instinctive Solutions, where we believe that everyone is an odd duck, but that is what makes them awesome. Now, today, my guest is Monica Gravenhof, residing in Zeeland, Michigan. Monica is the executive of operational excellence for the Performance Strategy Group. Now, how's that for a title? Monica has always been very relationship driven, and her secret sauce is all about how many people that she can help. Monica was a bank teller at the age of 15. 15! Imagine at 15 years old, handing out all that cash. Then once the downturn in the economy eliminated her job, which ruffled her feathers, her new career found her, and now she gets to help others learn and grow. She sees setbacks as learning opportunities, hindsight is 2020, and through that, gets to inspire others, and this is how Monica gets to better the pond. Ladies and gentlemen, Monica Gravenhof. Monica Gravenhof, otherwise known as Thor, from Performance Strategies Group, all the way from Zeeland, Michigan. Welcome to the Pondcast. I am so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So we met actually this past year at the Colby conference at ColbyCon and had large amounts of fun there. And throughout this conversation, right, it was like, hey, do you want to be a guest on the Pondcast? And here we are.
And here we are.
And here we are. This is absolutely fabulous. This is going to be fantastic. So before we jump into all the questions here, Monica, I want to, have the opportunity to tell us a little bit about Performance Strategies Group. And you are the executive of operational excellence. Isn't that quite the title?
Yes, it's a little bit of a mouthful.
But tell us all about what you do.
So Performance Strategies Group has been in business for a little over 33 years. Mary Martin founded Performance Strategies Group, or as we call it, PSG.
We give Mary a shout out?
Sure.
Shout out to Mary Martin.
Yes. Way good. Because I will reference her probably. So she founded Performance Strategies Group, and had a couple other people working for her prior to me coming on board. Her husband worked with her for a few years. I started with them about 12 and a half years ago and was the client services manager at that point in time. And we opted to switch my job title to the executive of operational excellence based on a lot of the projects that I was being involved in kind of changed over the years and timing. I became certified in Colby. So I handle really kind of the back end of our wherewithal. I handle a lot of training with clients. I handle kind of the back end for Mary, dealing with all of our materials and that type of thing, and just really focus in on the clients and what is their experience and how can I work with people as well. So with the Colby and how we utilize that from the index standpoint and the team collaboration.
So basically what I'm hearing you say is that Mary is more front stage and out on the stage and entertaining the masses, while you're backstage making sure that everything all works so that she can perform. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, absolutely. But I would also say I am in front of clients as well. So I am working with people as well. Not as much as what she does, because I handle all of her back end as well. So I have to have time to be able to do both.
Yay. So I've never, on the Pondcast, I have never really dove into this, believe it or not. But why don't you give us a quick synopsis when you talk about Colby and what Colby is? So give me the sort of the more the Cole's Notes version for the audience.
Okay. So Colby is developed by Kathy Colby. She developed a suite of tools that we can use to determine what our creative natural instincts are. There are multiple tools throughout the suite. We often use what we call the Colby A, the Colby B, the Colby C indexes when we're working with organizations. There are also youth indexes, relationship indexes, takes two. I mean, there are multiple different tools within that suite that we can use. And we do sometimes use those when people or individuals discover how great this information is, and now they want to bring it onto their own family. So we have done that in the past as well. What I think Colby is, for me personally, when I was exposed to this 12 and a half years ago, my eyes kind of lit up because I was really opened up to the point of, oh my goodness, no wonder I drive people crazy in some ways, and no wonder I can do such weird and odd things that people are looking at me like, oh my goodness, that's crazy. I have a profile that's probably fairly unique, where I have a long, what we'd call a follow through or blue bar, and a long green bar. So I go back and forth between those two. Handling multiple different projects in all different phases is kind of my forte. Whereas that would drive some people crazy to have to deal with a lot of different things happening all at once. Whereas for me, I kind of glob onto that, or I'll add more in if I don't feel like enough is going on. And I did not realize this until I understood what the Colby was. I kind of knew certain things about me, but Colby gave us this common language to be able to use, and for me to be able to describe it to somebody in an aspect of, I enjoy doing lots of different things at the same time, is so much better than, oh my word, I'm so scatterbrained, I'm going from this to this to this to this.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be able to describe it in a different way, that is probably one of the biggest things for me with Colby, and understanding that. I love to cook, to gourmet cook, and people will call me a gourmet cook, but I am definitely not. As you from your chef days would probably come taste my food and be like, yeah, no, you got nothing, Monica, you got nothing. I love to cook, and some of the recipes that I use, some of it comes down to the secret sauce. It's like McDonald's with the Big Mac, right? What's the secret sauce? And having the secret sauce added to a particular meat or dish, that's really what's going to make or break the dish. And I think that that's kind of what Colby brings to the table. That's how I would describe what they offer. They're the topping that make teams flow better, that make individuals and families understand each other better. That's kind of how I describe it.
Okay, so I have two questions for you on that note. One is, how would you describe how Colby differs from any of the other assessment tools out there, such as, there's Myers-Briggs, there's DISC, there's predictive index, there's Enneagram, there's colors, there's a strengths finder, there's a ton of them out there. How would you describe how Colby differs from any of the other assessment tools that are out there?
Yeah. So in those specific tools that you had listed, and assessments that are great and wonderful, they are really focused on the affective part of the mind, and what do I like or what do I dislike. This can change and fluctuate over time. So for example, just going back to the food, I used to hate tomatoes, I used to hate mushrooms. Now I love mushrooms, all kinds of mushrooms, and I'm okay with tomatoes. Kind of depends on the day. Maybe it's a tomato day, maybe it's not a tomato day. Those are preferences that have changed over time. So Myers-Briggs, what you like or dislike, are you introverted, are you extroverted, are you judging or perceiving? Those types of tools really focus in on more, what are your preferences, not really how you are going to function. And Kolbe really ends up focusing in on what is your natural, innate way of doing something. So when given a task, how I go about doing it is going to be different than how my husband goes about doing it or how Mary would go about doing it. Neither way is right or wrong. We're going to get to an end result, just not the same way. And understanding that and knowing that helps me to be able to understand what that person needs. So it comes down to not what they want or what they like, which is more of what those tools are that you listed are focused on, but what you need.
So it's needs versus wants.
Yes.
And does that piece of your mind change over time?
Statistics will say no. The index has an over 90% retake accuracy. I myself have taken it multiple times. I joke and I tell my husband I am who I am. He says, and I am who I am. So we know that how we go about doing things in that aspect does not change. Now, what I like and dislike has changed. So maybe my salad looks different than it did 10 years ago with tomatoes or without tomatoes. But what I need is still the food. I still need the food.
Right.
So being able to list it as this is what I like and what I need. I need to have a lot of different projects going on at once. I need to have a variety of things. I need to have options. And to not feel guilty about saying that or expressing that has helped tremendously.
Yeah, and I from my personal experience with it, I mean, for me, I will say when I took my Kolbe originally, it was one of the most liberating days of my life. And it was that freedom to, well, to be myself, but number two is like, why am I such a squirrel, and why do I mean, I multitask, so I'm jumping from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. I'm all over the map, and people like, why don't you just slow down? Why don't you, why can't you just stick with one thing? Why do you have to change it up? Why do you have to? Well, because I need to do all those things. And I will say that with my fact finder, growing up in school, especially, I mean, I used to think I was stupid because I couldn't sustain reading. I couldn't sustain having to gather all this information. Just show your work made no sense to me. Writing the 500-word essay made no sense to me, but I was forced to do it because that was the system. So knowing that I am who I am and I get to do it my way, there was a lot of freedom that came with that.
Yes, I imagine.
Yes. So my next question is, before we move on, is, so you talked about, like the Big Mac, the secret sauce, right? So Monica, what is your secret sauce? What's your secret sauce?
I think for me, I am relationship focused. I really look at how can I help people. For me, it's not about the numbers necessarily of getting 10, 15, 20 indexes done in X amount of time. It's how many people am I going to help in the process. So just scoring indexes is not of value to those that are completing them. It's not of value to the team members that are around them, and it's not of value to themselves. So ultimately, I want to be able to look back and say that I've helped somebody. I've helped somebody understand. I've helped a Warren feel liberated. That would be what I would love to be known as.
There it is. There's your secret sauce. All right. I'm gonna be a good steward of time here, Monica. So Monica, what got you from being a gosling? And I'm talking like we're going way back. What got you from being a gosling, right, to leaving the nest when you decided to go out on, you're gonna leave the nest, you're gonna fly out on your own, to where you are today? Monica Gravenhof, what is your backstory?
Wow. I was born in Michigan. I was raised in Iowa, and then attending school and college, I ended up with a communication degree, which
Whoa,
was
whoa, 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 whoa. I'm gonna stop you right there. We're gonna go. Let's go back to when you were a gosling. So you were born in Michigan.
I was.
Any siblings?
I have one older brother.
One older, and did he beat you up?
Since this is recorded, I shall not comment. No, he's a good guy.
You
He's
got
good.
along?
Yes, we do.
Okay, well that's good. That's good. And so you went to elementary school there, obviously. At what point did the family move to Iowa?
I went to elementary school in Iowa already.
Oh,
So I moved at a very young age. Um, I was probably one. My brother was three.
so you don't really
And
remember it.
no, it was like one and three or two and four kind of age differentiation. And
Okay.
we moved to Iowa to a small town in northwest Iowa called Sioux Center.
And what was
And
the reasoning behind the move?
the move. So my dad wanted us to go to a Christian school,
Hmm.
and the local schools where we were in Michigan at that point in time didn't satisfy his needs of what he wanted to have for us. So they moved us to Iowa, actually his hometown, which he never thought he would move back to. And my mom always vowed, especially in their marriage vows, that she would never move to. But they moved back and they lived there for 35 years almost. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
So there you go. So you grew up in Iowa. You went to elementary school. You went to high school.
Mhm.
So in your high school years, what was your first job?
Oof. I did some local babysitting, of course, but then I started working at a bank. At the age of
Ah,
15, I worked at a bank and I was a teller.
at 15 years old.
Yes.
That's
That's the
crazy.
relationship side of it. I was a people person.
Oh, that's
They put me on the
interesting.
line right away. They put me on the line right away.
Okay. So 15 at a bank
Yep.
teller,
Mhm.
handling cash at 15.
I know. It was so much fun.
Wow.
Even though it wasn't my cash, it was fun.
You got to see a lot of cash go through your hands though. So then it just prepared you for your spending in your latter years.
Right, right. Every
Yeah.
those hundreds going through on Fridays. Oh my goodness, that was a lot.
So you worked in the bank, you went to school, and how was your high school experience?
High school was okay. I was in a lot of sports. I played volleyball for the first year, track, basketball for a couple years. So heavy involved with that. I was in a play. I did kind of a wide variety of different things in high school. I would say I wish that I would have known my Colby back in high school because it would have helped me to be able to understand where I was coming from. And self awareness is probably one of the biggest things that people don't have today, or they need to have, or they have, but maybe they don't fully understand it.
Hmm.
And I think for me, if I had known, it would have changed my trajectory.
So yeah, so what do you think? That's a really interesting point, Monica. Like, what do you think would have changed? No, if you were to look back now and say you knew your Colby back then,
Mhm.
what how would that have made a differentiation in your life?
I think one of the first things would be my major in college. So I changed that a couple times, and which I don't think is uncommon. People change their major a lot in college. However, I think if I had known the strengths that I could bring, I would have probably focused in on some different areas. And so through what I know now, it has really drawn me into things that I'm really good at, and what should I be giving my time to, and what are things that I maybe should not be giving my time to. So I love to gourmet cook. However, for those of you that know Colby as a one-in implementer, that's probably not where I should be spending all of my time.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun for me as a hobby, and
Right.
it's a great deal for me to do in short spurts, but not something that I could do every day, all day long as an
Mhm.
executive
Right. And I hear that, even coming up into present day, I know we were talking about the past, but present day, there has been some local animals such as deer and pheasant that has gone through the Gravenhof household recently.
chef. Yes, there has a
So
lot, a lot of deer and a lot of pheasant, which means I have a lot of cooking to do.
do it in short spurts.
That's right. Not every day.
So you went into I'm just gonna take you back again. So in your high school years, and you said you wish you would have known. And at what point did you decide to leave the nest?
Once I was in college, which I actually stayed in my hometown for college, I met Brent, my husband, and he had come out to Michigan, to West Michigan, for a couple internships in college. And then when we decided to get married, then it was kind of the natural deal that we ended up back in Michigan. But I would say probably that spurred it on. I had felt a little itch to leave Iowa anyway, but it wasn't strong enough until he was like, well, I have a job somewhere else, so we're going.
So now, did you have a say in this, or was it like, by the way, we're going?
um, sort of. It was, yeah. I mean, I was just like, I guess wherever you get a job, that's pretty much what we'll do, and I'll just find a job. It wasn't something that my job was not going to be the high priority of the move. So.
And what were you doing at the time? I'm assuming you were no longer a bank teller at this point.
I did do banking throughout college as well. I worked for another bank about an hour or so from my hometown at a lake that we had a place at. It's called Okoboji, and I spent my summers there, working there. And then in college, I would work at the radio station as well as then the bank. And once I graduated and then we moved out to Michigan, I started looking for a job and I couldn't really find anything, and my husband didn't really want me to be on the air. So I started back in banking and worked for a bank for 8 years here in Michigan.
Wow, so you've got so from 15 on, you had quite a lengthy stint in that industry.
Yes. I was in banking for a long time.
Now here's the question. You said that Brent did not want you to go on the air, but did you want to go on the air?
Well, that was what my degree was in, was TV or radio broadcasting. So that was initially my plan, is that I would end up on the air, yes. But if you listen to most DJs now, they pretty much talk about their families. And he's a fairly private person, so we talk about the Myers-Briggs. He's more of an introvert, I'm more of an extrovert, and he did not want the family's business out there. So at that point, it was find something else to do.
Why don't you go work in a bank?
Why don't you just go work in a bank?
I see. So there you were back in Michigan. You're in the banking industry, and so now bring us up from that point up into what you're doing today. How did that journey sort of come about?
That was interesting. So I worked for the bank for 8 years. I did various things for them. I started as a teller in a local branch, and then I did a couple different things, worked for the ATM department, worked in technology and went back to the branch for a little while. And then with the economic downturn, my position was eliminated. And at that point, we had the 2 kids. We had just had our second, and I went back to work, and I'll be honest, I was kind of miserable. And it was multiple different things going on, but then I was eliminated, and I looked for work for a while, and I couldn't find anything with the economic downturn. So I stayed home with our kids for a couple years, and I was not looking to go back to work at all. I figured once the kids get back in school, then maybe I'll do something part-time or think about what else I could use my strengths for. And at that point, I didn't know my Colby strengths, but just understanding my organization skills with a lot of projects, knowing that about myself, how could I use that, and how could I see that play out in the community and with the school that my kids attended, etc. So I stayed home with them, and then some friends of ours sent an email, and it was one that Mary had written because she was looking for a new client services manager. The one that she had had for 12 years was retiring, and she was looking for someone. And I read through the description, and my mouth kind of dropped open, because probably 9 of the 10 or 14 of the 15 things that were listed, I was like, that is me. That is exactly me. Oh my goodness, this is crazy. And my husband and I had been talking, and he said, so are you going to go back to work? And I said, no, probably not. I said, maybe once the kids get in school, I'll think about it, but it's going to have to be part-time. It's going to have to be something that I love, that I believe in, not just banking something. It's going to have to be something that has flexible hours. And I kind of listed all this stuff off, and he kind of looked at me and he's like, so you're not going back to work? And I said, no, probably not. And the next week, God had something else in mind, and he showed us that email of this description of the job that Mary was looking for, this working description. And I didn't really know what to do. I thought, oh my goodness, this is it. This is the wrong timing though, because I really wanted to wait until the kids were back in school. And I sent in my resume to Chris, her husband, who was working with her at the time. And he looked at it, and I don't really know what he did with it, but he didn't call me. So I left it. And about a week later, I said to my husband, do you think I should call? Maybe they didn't even get it. Or maybe it's just not what I should be doing. That's, kind of the hint. And he said, no, I think you should call on it. I think he was really ready for me to start working again. So I called on it, and I called Chris, and he said, oh yeah, I remember. I got the resume. Yes, I have it. And he said, but I didn't see any computer experience. And I said, well, that's on page 2, midway down. And apparently I just listed the programs that I could use. I didn't list what I could do within those programs. So they were looking for a little bit more of that description in the resume, which I didn't have. So he looked it over, and he said, okay, well, we have 4 people. We're going to interview 5. If you're the 5th one, I'll let you know. And he called me back within a matter of 20 minutes, and he said, you're the 5th person. How does Tuesday morning sound? So I interviewed with them, and it was a total God thing. They both had radio in their background, had worked for radio stations. Mary had worked for a newspaper. So just kind of that small connection, but then we just kind of clicked right from the get-go, and I started working for them in March of 2010.
And then here you are today.
And here I am today, which my job has completely changed, but I'm good with it. I'm good with the direction, because we've molded it to be more like me as opposed to the person whose position I took. And Chris has stepped away from the business, and so I've taken on some of his responsibilities, and along with getting certified, meeting with clients, and dealing with kind of the back room or behind the scenes stuff.
Right, exactly. So I always say it's kind of funny. You said, getting that job was a God thing, and I always say if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
That's right. That's right.
Because you just never, the thing is you just never know, right, where things are
No.
going to come out of left field. And I believe, just on a different note, that life happens for you, not to you.
Mhm.
And how those things sort of just not, it's interesting when you look back, you can see those little episodes of your life, how things just landed. But you didn't plan it. They happened to you, or happened
Right.
for you, I should say.
Mhm.
All right. So there it is. We got you from being a gosling to leaving the nest to where you are now. This is your backstory. So what's the biggest thing or the greatest thing that's ever happened to you that's ruffled your feathers? And how did you respond to it?
Yeah. I think a series of things happened in 2008. About one thing happened every month for me. And that year was probably the pivotal moment, one of which I was eliminated. That was in August. But in July, my husband's boat had capsized, and he was out there with three of his childhood friends and their father out in Lake Michigan. And so that had happened, and Rena was born, and that was kind of a whole nother story. But just every month, something happened that year, and I think it was really kind of a pivotal deal for me that I started to think, I don't want to do a job where I'm just going to get paid and I'm okay with punching a clock. When I worked at the bank, I worked with so many young girls that were, I just need the money. They're living paycheck to paycheck, and they were good at what they did, but they didn't love it. And for me, that's disheartening because I grew up with two parents that absolutely loved their jobs and they were good at them. And so to be exposed to somebody who was doing the paycheck to paycheck kind of thing, it wasn't really something that I was 100% familiar with, I would say. Yeah, you hear about it, but in the town that I grew up in, most people did what they did and they loved it. And they did it because they loved it. So for me, it was just being able to see that. But when that year kind of ended, it was more for me, this was a learning and a growing experience, all of the different things that happened and adding those on to each other. What is God trying to tell me? Where am I supposed to be? How are things supposed to be for my life and with my kids? And I grew up never really wanting to be a stay-at-home mom. And when I did it, I absolutely loved it. It was the bomb. I
Mm.
had so much fun. I traveled with the kids. We had to go to Mexico for my husband for work for a couple months. I mean, we experienced so many things that I would have been able to do had I been working full time and or even part time. So having that and knowing that it was a good thing, it was probably something that I never would have chosen for myself, but because that's the way it went, then I think that was probably one of the better things that happened in my life. I have this quote here from Bob Dole, the former majority leader of the House. I think one of life's greatest milestones is when a person can look back and be almost as thankful for the setbacks as for the victories. And it's hard to say, because sometimes when you're in the midst of those setbacks, life is done. You're hardly getting air to breathe some days. And when you can really turn and focus in on what are the small victories, what are the victories for today, and think of it more as a learning experience as opposed to a setback, I think that that is what can help people. And I know they say hindsight is 2020, but really ultimately that is so true.
Mhm.
Because when we can look back and say, in the midst of it, that was one of the worst experiences of my life. What happened and what I was put through, yes, that was awful, horrendous. Untruths were said, a lot of things. So dealing with that, but coming to the other side of it and saying, I never would have had those years with my kids or the experiences that I had or the time with my family because I wasn't tied down to a job or the need that I had to have money in order to survive.
So in saying that, Monica, that's really interesting. So when my question was, how did you respond to it? And when you were in the thick of it, did you ever see it as a gift or as an opportunity to grow? Did you ever see it from a positive side when you were going through it?
I think there were times when I would look at it and I would say, a year from now, this is going to be the best thing that's ever happened to me. But it wasn't something that I would say in that moment, oh my goodness, this is great. I remember thinking a couple times, this is a blessing in disguise. I'm happy to have this burden and these bricks removed from my shoulders. I don't have to deal with it anymore. So I remember thinking those things, but the application of it, I would say, is a little bit harder.
Well, that's true. I
Has to come a little bit later.
I call it the gift in the ugly box, is what I
Yes,
call it. Right?
there you
It's
go.
it's the
Yes,
gift in the ugly box.
yes.
All right. So now I'm sure you're aware of this from our conversations before when we were out in Phoenix, right? That the geese do fly 71% further and faster when flying in the V formation. We know that. What do you think is the secret to getting a team to fly in that V formation from your experience and the work that you do?
I would have to say that one of the things would be the Colby, the understanding. So it's the self-awareness of the team and those that you're working with to be able to know what you can count on them for. I know that I can count on you, Warren, to give me the bottom line, cut to the chase, cut through the minutia. You don't need to have bureaucratic schedules. So I know that I can rely on you for that. I know that I can rely on you to throw out 10 different options when we're kind of at ahead. So what do we need to do? Okay, here's a thought, here's a thought, here's a thought. I can look to you for that. And if I didn't know your numbers, your Colby numbers, your Colby MO, I would not be able to say that in a constructive way. So being able to understand, what am I going to offer? What are you going to offer? And how can we mold that together better? Where are ways that this might cause conflict? There are times when that's great. We need to come together to do this certain thing, but there's times when we know that that's not something we should be doing together. So let's go our separate ways and reconnoiter. We don't need to have everybody in the meeting for everything. So I think being able to understand that and having Colby as the base, number one, as a communication tool, but number two, as a self-awareness tool, and then applying it to the team productivity and being able to understand how it can help from that.
Yeah, I think it's so fascinating, and even from my own experience, of helping align people to what they do best. And what's really interesting, and I just had a sort of a little aha moment, but as you were talking to me about what you can count on me for, I automatically started to feel better. I automatically started to feel like I kind of perked up a little bit, like, oh, like, right. And which is really, I mean, it was kind of interesting as you were talking. I'm like, so as you were talking, I thought, what if I was on your team, right? And in the boardroom or around the table, and you start saying, okay, I know I can count on you for this. I know I can count on this. And you're talking to me of all the things that I do best. I would naturally want to respond in a positive fashion to be able to provide that for you.
Yes.
And so you increase the energy in the room.
I hope so. I think one of the things so many people focus on for so long in the business world was here's your strengths, here's your weaknesses. Now go work on your weaknesses.
Mhm.
And nobody wants to sit and work on their weaknesses from a standpoint. I look at Colby, I look at my one in implementer, and if I had to be doing 100% implementer work, which I did, there were times when I had to put pig pens together, literally a pig oink oink pen out in the middle of nowhere in southern Minnesota in the winter. So I'm outside in the elements, like none of what is good for me, right? And for my MO per se, but it gave me a learning experience, and I knew that it was short-lived. I knew that it was not something I could do for a long period of time. It was not a sustainable action for me. But to be able to understand that about team members, to say, this is where I would thrive, and not just me encouraging you in what your strengths are, but me being able to even voice it myself,
Mhm.
to say, this is what I need. I need to have an environment where I have multiple different projects going on at once. I need to have them in different phases. I need some of them customized. I need some that we're going to do some similar to this, or maybe we'll take a little bit of this project, a little bit of this project, a little bit of this project, and we're going to make a new project come out of that based on what that team wants to see for objectives. So for me, it's me being able to verbalize it and the team members feeling comfortable saying that, you getting encouraged, and the team seeing that. And absolutely using the other indexes with alignment and making sure that expectations are set are vital to the entire process.
So you were just describing, you're just describing your secret sauce again. There you go.
That's right.
So again, I'm going to try to be a good steward of time here. Um, so Monica, what are you doing right now to better the pond, and what ripples are you creating?
Yes. Okay. So I think some of our core values that I would really glab onto, we have multiple, but it's really be life changing is one of them. And as I said earlier, just working with people where they can walk away and feel, like you said, energized. I understand this now about myself. I can apply this. I can see things coming out as a result of this. I have great joy when I work with teams. I've been working with an organization for over a year, and when I went back the last time, I was meeting with the CEO, and she was like, well, I've changed a few things. And I looked at her flat out and I said, is it because you understand the Colby? And she said, yes, it is.
Mm.
And she aligned things more for this team member to fit with who the team member is. And that gives me great joy, because it's not just being life changing for the CEO, but it's understanding that she is applying this. And now we have a tangible result coming out of what they've learned, how they're interacting as a team, what the expectations are, what the role is, and how that all plays out. So being able to see that, it gives me great joy.
So in saying that, just using that example, you said that the CEO has now made the changes for that, that employee or that team member, so that it's more aligned with that individual's Colby. What ripples do you think that creates?
Well, I hope it creates happy ripples with the individuals themselves, because now they're going home satisfied more in their job. I hope it is a encouragement to the team members to understand that their CEO is willing to adjust and modify things to fit them, that she's not just looking to, wipe everybody out kind of deal. It's let's understand what your strengths are and how you can be used. You're a great part of the team. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose your expertise, but maybe some of those projects that you've been working on aren't best aligned for you. So who is on the team, and for everybody to feel comfortable with it together.
So let me ask you this question. So just for yourself personally, when you've been doing tasks all day, so you've had a day where you are really well aligned, where you've done things that just like they're natural for you, you're in your rhythm, you're using your secret sauce.
Mhm.
And how did that play out? How did you feel at the end of the day versus, and how did that affect others versus being in the field putting pigs in pens in the winter? when when you're not in alignment for who you are, and how did that play out by the end of the day?
Yes. Well, I was quite drained when I was doing that. I knew it was a temporary thing. It was over a Christmas break in college. However, there wasn't really much give at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot of stretch in the rubber band per se. I was really exhausted. I was done. I I would say I'd probably have a shorter temper
Mm-hmm.
than maybe what I'd normally have, a little bit less patience kind of thing, as opposed to days where I am filled up with what I love and what I enjoy. I can come home and do one of those meals with the secret sauce instead of being like, ah, we're ordering pizza tonight kind of deal. So it's
Yeah,
gives you just kind of it fills you up, it fills your cup.
right. And so you think of how does that affect, and saying that, how does that affect the people around you?
Yeah, exactly. Either they get good food and healthy food, or they get junk food.
So those are the ripples that you create.
Right.
Right.
I can know this now. I can understand when there's days, right? I could have 12 years ago, 15 years ago, I would come home and I would be frustrated, and it would come out.
Mm-hmm.
And um it was not a pretty sight. I was not a nice person.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to say that just having some of that, and I'm not saying I don't have my bad days. I have my bad days too.
Oh, don't we all?
But just having that understanding and being able to say, today's been a very frustrating day, a stressful day. I'm kind of exhausted. My implementer, and I can say this openly, my husband knows his Colby, he knows my Colby, and I can say my implementer is done. I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm toast.
Yeah.
So
But isn't that powerful to say that though? Isn't that powerful to know that and say, my implementer is done and he understands that, okay, I get where you're coming from, and then just let it go, right? Instead of trying to drag it through the mud
mhm,
and then, then create either hardship or because we know that it turns into emotion
mhm,
and then things get said or whatever the case may be, and that people get ticked off. So
yeah,
to me, that's very powerful to be able to know that and be able to utilize it in a very productive manner.
yes. And it's not, I don't want to say it's not a cop out. It's just
Mhm.
I'm trying to communicate to you right now. I'm exhausted. So unless you want to take over dinner duties, I mean, this is just one example, but this is where I'm at today.
Yeah.
And I don't really have to get into all the details of everything. And for me, that wouldn't be my deal. It's more my husband's deal. But I don't have to. I can just say I'm kind of exhausted. Today is a done deal.
Yeah. But I think it's powerful. That's, to me, that's just meaningful relationship. That's meaningful communication.
Yes,
So that's to me, that's a game changer. I'm not sure what your thoughts are.
absolutely. I would say I consistently say when I'm meeting with clients, we have a pre-Colby household and we have a post-Colby household.
Mhm. Yeah.
In our pre-Colby, there was a lot of things going on, and there are now too. We have two kids that are now coming into the communication cycle, and how they need communication is different than how my husband and I had ours tweaked before we had them. So there's a difference going on there. The team dynamic has changed, quote unquote.
Mhm.
Uh, but being able to understand that and know, I've even used it with my son and his teachers to be able to describe some of the needs that he has and how he learns versus a standard school setting, and what they need to have and what he needs in order
Mhm.
for him to be successful.
So it's affected the whole family, is what you're saying.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. See, that's creating some serious ripples. That's like almost waves, for crying out loud. So, so Monica, what is one lesson that you've learned along your journey, from being a gosling to leaving the nest, that you would share with an entrepreneur starting a business today?
Oh, I would say one of the biggest things is you want to know who you're working with right away. We work with a lot of organizations on hiring, and a lot of them want to do it after the fact. And I don't think that that is a wise decision. I think
Mm-hmm.
you know before you'd hire them what they're gonna do at the table, what I can count on them to do or not to do. People can say a lot of things in their interview. They can write a lot of things on their resume,
Mm-hmm.
but when you see them in action, it could take you 6 to 8 months to understand how they naturally operate, because they will gravitate back towards that after a set amount of time. But with Colby, you can understand it right from the get-go. You don't even have to meet them, and you can understand, what am I going to count on this person to be able to do? Are they going to fill the seat that we need them to fill? Now, I don't want to discount, any previous experience or what they can bring to the table from an intellectual side of things. That's not what Colby is about, but understanding some of those things. But now, how are they really going to work? Because when we look at organizations that quite often need to have so much energy of this organization, which we call follow through, and then they end up hiring somebody who's like a 2 or 3 in follow through, and it just doesn't work because this person doesn't operate in that manner that they are expecting them to.
Mm-hmm.
It
So
would be,
basically, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it would be like you having to be in an 8 to 5 job every day. That would be draining for you.
That makes my skin crawl just thinking about it.
I bet it does.
So really what you're saying is that, just to make sure that, that you know what to expect from the people around you, put the right people in the right seats on the bus, and setting people up for what for success, for what the expectations are. Is that, can I summarize it?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, I have one last question for you there, Monica, and which you do not have. So it is, if you were standing on a mountain and the whole world was intently listening to you, what would you say?
Oh boy. I would probably say, get to know Christ as your personal Lord and Savior.
And why?
Because he is the way, the truth, and the life. And I think that so many people do not know that and have not heard it and have not had the opportunity to hear it.
And there is your wise words for you being the golden sage goose on the pond. So, Monica, I really want to thank you for your time today. I want to thank you for sharing your stories. I want to, thank you for sharing your secret sauce. And it's quite interesting listening to you because, going back, even back when you were 15 and working in the bank, you got the job because the fact is that you were a good communicator and you believed in relationship. And really, when you think about it, you're still doing the same thing now. So your secret sauce is carried all the way through. You are who you are.
I am.
So if people wanted to find you, Monica, where do people go and find you?
Goodness, I'm on LinkedIn. I do have a Facebook page. I have an email, and I don't know, is that something that you normally share? Or?
Yep, absolutely.
Sure. Monica at psgteam.com.
Monica at psgteam.com.
Yes. And Monica is with a C.
And Monica's with a C.
Yes. And I am on LinkedIn. Yep. And then also I would probably say email or the Facebook would be the best thing. Getting
And what
back into
about
Instagram. Ah.
uh, what about the website?
psgteam.com is also available, I believe. I don't think actually now that we have removed the access to be able to connect with that, but you can definitely go on there to learn more about PSG, Mary, myself,
Okay, so you can go
and the
there as a
Colby
resource.
courses. Yep.
All right, perfect. Well, there you have it, folks. It was a great time here with Monica with a C. So this is Warren Barry, and I'm flocking off to take you beyond the pond to better the pond, because we're better together. Thank you so much, Monica.
See ya.